What if one photo, one forgotten image, held the key to a past you never knew existed? What if the man applauded for saving lives had actually stolen yours? This isn't just a story about secrets. It's a story about identity, about justice, about a young woman who served champagne at a billionaire's gala, only to discover her own childhood photo hanging on his wall. She was supposed to be dead, but she came back. Not just to uncover the truth, but to rewrite it. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will shake you to the core, and by the end you'll be asking, what would you do if you found out your enemy raised an empire on your grave? Welcome to the story of Amina Okoro, the hidden heiress who refused to stay silent. They told her to stay out of the East Wing. It was reserved for VIP guests. But when the tray in Amina Okoro's hands began to wobble from the weight of champagne flutes, she turned the wrong corner and stepped into history. The hallway was quieter than the rest of the estate. Carpets muffled her footsteps. Antique sconces threw golden light against deep mahogany walls. And then she saw it. Second frame from the left. A photograph so familiar it stopped her in her tracks. A girl. 5 years old, at most. Dark brown skin, wide, wondering eyes, and a small red ribbon in her braids. The photo was nestled between oil paintings of old money ancestors. But this one wasn't a portrait from centuries past. It was her. Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled. One of the champagne flutes nearly tipped. She tightened her grip. Froze stared. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was her. Her photo. The one her foster mother used to keep tucked inside a wooden box labeled before. How did it end up here, on a wall in one of Manhattan's most luxurious brownstone mansions? The answer wasn't in the frame. Not yet. Amina turned quickly, heart thudding against her ribs just as a security guard's voice sliced the silence. "You lost, sweetheart?" She snapped back into character. Neutral smile, polite tone. "I was. Just looking for the kitchen entrance, took a wrong turn." He narrowed his eyes. "This wing's restricted, you need to head back to the main ballroom." "Yes, sir." She pivoted, tray still balanced in her hands, and walked away, but not before burning that image into her memory. The little girl in the red ribbon, the ghost of a life she thought was long buried. Back in the ballroom, the music swelled. Laughter danced through the air like perfume. Wealth shimmered in every corner. But all Amina could see was that photograph, that wall, and the name beneath the frame, Charles Whitman, the billionaire philanthropist hosting tonight's charity gala. The man, speaking on stage about his lifelong mission to help orphaned children in Africa. Amina moved between guests like a ghost, noticing every word he said, every calculated smile, every story of sacrifice and redemption. And she wondered, was she just another story, or the one he never expected to come back? Charles Whitman didn't just speak to a room, he owned it. His voice, deep and smooth, carried the weight of practiced empathy. He told tales of distant villages and the children his foundation had saved. Guests dabbed at their eyes with linen napkins. They reached for checkbooks between courses of caviar and seared duck. Amina watched from the perimeter, a silent observer with 1,000 thoughts. The photo had shaken her to her core, but it was the man's smile that chilled her. It wasn't cold, it was worse. It was hollow. A shell of sincerity honed over years of press conferences and fundraising. Dinners? When he laughed, it didn't touch his eyes. When he spoke of hope, something bitter flickered beneath the surface. And Amina knew one thing. This man knew more than he let on. After the speech, Charles descended the stage. The crowd surged toward him like moths to a flame. He shook hands, signed programs, thanked donors with charisma that made even the skeptics swoon. But when his eyes met Amina's from across the ballroom, he blinked. A moment, a flicker. Recognition or guilt? She couldn't tell. She moved closer, not to speak, just to watch, to listen, to feel. Woman next to her whispered, "He lost a daughter once, years ago. That's why he started the foundation." Amina felt her stomach twist, lost like a misplaced item, not abandoned, not stolen, just lost. Charles continued mingling, but he glanced back at her, only once, and she saw it, the ghost in his gaze, a ghost that looked a lot like her. As the gala continued, Amina's questions multiplied. How long had her photo hung in that hallway? Who else had seen it? Had he kept it as a memory, a secret, a trophy? And most importantly, why? Why her? Why now? She had no answers, but she had time and she knew where to start looking. The next morning, Amina skipped her usual shift. Instead, she walked 3 blocks through Harlem to a small cafe tucked between a bodega and a laundromat. It wasn't fancy, but Grace went there every morning at 8:15, like clockwork. Grace was a retired private investigator from Ghana, sharp eyes, sharper instincts, and more importantly, she owed Amina a favor. "You look like you saw a ghost," Grace said, sipping her espresso. "Not a ghost," Amina replied. "A picture of me in a billionaire's hallway." Grace didn't blink. She leaned forward, start talking. Amina told her everything. The photo, the man, the way he looked at her. Grace scribbled notes with the same urgency of a reporter chasing a lead. Then she pushed the cup aside. "You ready to open a door that might not close again?" Amina nodded. They started at the city records office, then moved to newspaper archives. After 3 days of digging, they found it. An old article. Headline: "Wife of tech mogul dies in fire. Daughter presumed dead." The man, Charles Whitman. The woman, Zola Nkiru, Amina's mother. The article said her body was found. The child's was not, but paperwork later declared the child dead anyway. Convenient, suspicious, Grace muttered. Too clean, too quick. They kept digging. Medical reports, autopsy. Photos. Zola had smoke in her lungs, but also traces of a rare sedative. She was drugged before the fire, Grace whispered. Amina felt her world tilt. Her mother hadn't just died. She had been silenced, and her daughter erased. But why, and why now? Answers were coming, and Amina was ready to follow every clue to the end. They weren't just chasing ghosts anymore. They were unearthing a cover-up, one forged document at a time. Grace and Amina dug deeper into the trail Charles Whitman had left behind. First came the insurance payout record, a $500,000 life insurance check issued 2 weeks after Zola's death. The beneficiary, Charles himself. Then came the forged death certificate for Amina, filed with the state, approved with no body found. Someone fast-tracked this through with powerful hands, Grace muttered. More paper trails emerged, bank transactions, anonymous wire transfers, private accounts in the Caymans, and then, the most chilling discovery. Amina stumbled across a deleted blog post saved in an archived PDF, written by Zola, months before her death. It detailed her undercover investigation into a corrupt adoption agency in upstate New York, one receiving major donations from the Whitman Foundation. The same agency had connections to child trafficking rumors. Zola had named names, threatened to go public. Then the fire happened, and silence followed. Grace stared at the screen. She was too close to the truth. The final nail came from a whistleblower, an ex-employee of the Whitman Foundation. He contacted Grace through an encrypted forum, met them in a church basement. He handed over a folder of internal memos. Marked confidential inside were memos linking Charles to hush payments made to multiple women, victims, mothers, some who never got their children back. It was a pattern. Buy silence, bury questions, rewrite. History, Amina couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about her. It was about every child Charles had built his empire upon, lies layered on top of grief. She turned to Grace. It's time. Grace nodded. To burn down the story he built. The annual Whitman Foundation Gala had never sparkled brighter. Chandeliers glittered, flashbulbs popped, and Charles Whitman stood center stage, ready to deliver his keynote on second chances and saving lives. What he didn't know was that the woman carrying the final tray of champagne wasn't just a waitress. She was his reckoning. Amina stepped onto the edge of the platform, her heart steady, her voice rehearsed. As Charles thanked the crowd, she raised her hand. "Excuse me, Mr. Whitman. Mind if I ask you something? About the daughter you say you lost?" The crowd shifted. Whispers spread. Charles squinted into the lights. "I'm sorry, who?" Amina stepped into full view. The spotlight caught the crimson ribbon in her hair. Recognition flashed across his face. Amina smiled. "The daughter you declared dead, forged papers, insurance payout, the one you built this entire foundation on." Gasps. A hush swept the room. Charles staggered back. That's absurd." But Amina wasn't done. She pulled out a folder, held it high. "These are the documents, the forgeries, the payout forms, the hush money, the whistleblower reports." Journalists leapt to their feet. Cameras turned. A projector flicked on. Images filled the screen. Amina's childhood photo, insurance ledgers, the fake death certificate. Amina's voice never wavered. "You didn't lose a daughter. You tried to erase one, and now everyone knows." Security moved toward her, but someone shouted, "Let her speak!" More guests joined in. The room erupted. Sirens wailed outside. 2 uniformed officers entered, badge and cuffs ready. "Charles Whitman, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." The billionaire didn't speak. Didn't blink, just stared at Amina as if seeing her for the first time. She leaned in. "You built a lie. I built the truth. And tonight, the truth wins." 6 months later, the Whitman Foundation had a new name: the Zola Okoro Initiative. The plaque on the front gate shimmered under spring sunlight, and inside, children laughed, played, learned. Free from the lies that once overshadowed these halls. Amina Okoro stood at the entrance. She wore a navy suit, her ribbon now gold, a symbol not of loss, but of triumph. Reporters followed her every move. But today wasn't about headlines, it was about healing, about reclaiming what was stolen. Grace stood beside her, proud, tired, victorious. "You did it," she said softly. Amina smiled. "No," she replied. "We did." The justice system had done its part. Charles Whitman was serving a 25-year sentence. His empire dismantled. His name stripped from schools, hospitals, and gala banners. But the real work had just begun. Amina used the millions in reclaimed funds to build 4 new orphanage centers, each one named after a woman who had been silenced. Zola.Ama. Fatima. Nia. She didn't just want justice, she wanted legacy. Children thrived in classrooms, funded by truth. Teachers shared stories of resilience. Volunteers, many of them once victims, returned as mentors. One evening, Amina sat on the rooftop of the headquarters watching dusk settle over the city. Grace brought 2 mugs of tea, handed one over. "A woman from Kenya emailed you," she said. "Said your story gave her courage to fight her son's illegal adoption." Amina nodded slowly. "That's one." Grace smiled. "And there will be more." They sat in silence for a while, until Grace spoke again. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Amina didn't answer right away. She thought about the girl in the photograph, about fire and silence, about finding herself framed in someone else's lie. "No," she said finally. "I regret waiting so long to find the truth." A week later, Amina stood before a classroom of high school students. She shared her story, from foster care to forgotten, from waitress to warrior, from erased to remembered. "Sometimes," she told them, "the truth is buried so deep, you have to dig through generations to find it." She paused, then added, "But when you do, make sure the world hears it." The class stood in ovation. Amina bowed her head, not in shame, but in honor. Her mother's spirit lived on, not in headlines, but in hope. And as she walked past the portrait of Zola now hanging above the school entrance, she whispered, "We're finally home, Mom." If this story moved you, if it made you angry, inspired you, or made you think of the truths buried in your own family tree, don't forget to share it, because silence protects the guilty. But stories, they free the rest of us. Subscribe for more tales of the brave, the broken, and those bold enough to rewrite their fate. This wasn't just Amina's story. It was a reminder that no lie lives forever, that justice may take years, but when it comes loud, and sometimes it walks in wearing a gold ribbon and carrying a truth no one saw coming.